Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call a meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. We're on item number 22, 22 Alpha. This is to appoint one member to the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission to fill a term that expires in December 2020. We have two, right, Nancy? I think one reappointment, one requesting reappointment, and for the same position as a new application. Who do we have first?
Right, so Mark's going to go first.
All right.
Reappointment request.
Hi, Mark.
Good afternoon.
How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
We all know you. I'm going to give you a big softball question. I'll give the same one to Paul when he comes up.
Uh-oh.
What do you think about South Carson Street design?
I like it
Why?
because it's working really hard for all the different groups that have some skin in the game, I guess, there, and the businesses that are critical to the taxes for this community are in the middle of that. But it's accommodated some commitment that the city's made for more complete streets, which to safer for the pedestrians and safer for the walkers and the bicyclists. So I think it's a good compromise, but there's still a little bit of discussion that may go on with that, but it protects the business interest to me, which is really important. But I'm a bicyclist, so I certainly have some desire to see changes on South Carson because it's very dangerous. But,
Okay.
So I like it, and I like where it's going.
All right. Thanks, Mark. All right. Go.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
All right, if you had a crystal ball, what is your vision for regional transportation in the future for Carson City?
Probably if I had a crystal ball, I wouldn't be working on that one, but if that's what I got in the crystal ball, I want to see some sustainability in the funding for the program here in the city, and that's critical. And I hope this, if I'm lucky enough to be put back on the board again, is to see some movement towards figuring how to get the right kind of funding. And if I had that crystal ball, I don't know how we're going to answer that because taxes isn't popular or levies of funds for certain groups and stuff. So it's going to be some tough decisions being made. And that crystal ball probably won't help, actually, because it's going to be some really tough decisions. But that's, I think, where ITC needs to be, is moving towards sustainable funding for its roadways.
Good afternoon, Mark. Obviously, you and I work together a lot since you're the chair of Campo and I'm the chair of RTC, and we're both on RTC together. So I think I know you pretty well and how you work. My question for you is, where do you think we should focus our priorities over the next couple of years? Should we focus more on road repair and maintenance, or should it be public transportation, or should it be both? Just kind of give me an idea of what you would like to do over the next 2 years.
Well, as most agencies in the city government, there's always a difficult decisions being made about how the funds get split and what's more important. I think the city's made a really important decision to support transit, so I would hate to see transit fall to the wayside in any way, and a lot of that's funded from the federal government anyway. And I've seen very good results from the staff that work in Carson City of getting funding to keep transit going. So the roads we all know are going to be a big problem, and I don't think the picture's been painted for the public very well yet. So as we look at some of the roadways and the new system that's been put in place to do segments throughout the city, some of those segments that are behind that kind of the scheduling are going to feel that and see that the roads are in desperate need. So when it comes to safety for the roadways and the pavement and being access for the public and fire and ambulance and all those things, it becomes really important. But transit also supports a part of the community that is underserved too sometimes if you don't have transit in place. So those are some of the tough decisions that I would love to be a part of, but work with staff and look for funding and which we all know with RTC, a lot of the funding comes from the federal government to support what we do in this small community. How best to be creative and grab every cent we can, just like the mayor went back to DC and helped Carson Street. That was huge. And the city's been very successful in the past with some of these grants at that level. So with a good track record like we have, and I know that RTC and the staff here in Carson have a lot of respect from NDOT, who is the other funder for a lot of what we do in this community. So we gain that respect, we keep that respect, and the board works hard and listens to the public and listens to their concerns and makes some of these tough decisions. But I think both those programs are integral to any community that's the size of Carson City to support this whole community. So I hope I answered that somewhat fairly for you. Okay.
So, what are 3 issues you consider when determining whether to approve a project?
3 issues. I don't like issues. There we go. Okay. Those are always weighed, like a lot of times you talk about, you get funding from other sources, so you have to weigh the staff time versus the money that you are going to receive. A lot of times that can be wealthy for the staff, and then they lose out on what needs to be most important to them, which are the cities and the taxpayers in this community, rather than maybe another project that's kind of supports one part of the community, but not the whole community. So I look to see that it's been balanced with staff time, and that it is worth the time, I think, that the staff puts in it, plus the fact the city might have to match it, and we're in the budget, which a lot of discussion comes to. So the budget is a key component to anything that comes. So it's staff and budget. And then another thing that I look at is sustainability after it's done. So sometimes you get money, you get a brand new road, and then 20 years down the road, you don't have the money to maintain it. So I think every community in Nevada has learned you keep paving, but you'll never catch up with the maintenance, and that's where a lot of us are. And that's where the gas tax went in Reno, Washoe County, to support that part of the problem. So new pavement's not always a good thing, so it's kind of the balances all those things out, so that it's sustainable, that it's the budget, and that it's worth the time that staff put in it.
Seems like we're talking a lot about money, Mark. Money is one of the crucial things.
Whatever that statement is.
So the feds and the state seem to be absent without leave, although maybe the state through NDOT's doing its part, but the state in terms of legislature gives us the chance sometimes to go to the public. How do we convince our public, since we may have to rely on Carson City residents? What 2 things would you say are the most important ways to get the public to turn around? You've already sort of mentioned that, and support more money for roads.
Well, that's a problem that almost every governmental agency has and nonprofit has. It's how to paint this picture of the need and the vision and the goals that you have. And government isn't sometimes do a job as some of the nonprofits do to paint the picture, the need. And I think the picture wasn't painted that well for Carson City when we went after the extra gas tax. I wrote a letter to the editor, so I saw I had no influence over the city in support of it, because I thought there was a lot of misinformation that went out, and it's really hard to stop that misinformation. The social networks are really difficult nowadays to catch up with sometimes. So it's painting the right picture, and some of that picture is going to come showing the need, which is deteriorating roadways, and it's really hard to express to people a budget in a visual way with a chart or a graph to show this is where we're at, and this is where we want to be or should be, and this is where we better be in the next 10 years, or we're going to actually see roads turned back to graded gravel or something. Maybe not that bad, but certainly not a situation that we want. So I don't know how I'd pick 2 items, but it's like in the nonprofit world, we call it the elevator pitch, and we call it at Tahoe the ski lift pitch. You got them for a few minutes, so how you're going to get them convinced that what you want and need is worth their time or their money or their investment or their vote. In this situation, it's just a vote. And I think that if you do a good job next time and maybe paint that picture the way it needs to be done, people will look at that better, and then you have done the best job you could to get the message out. problem with government is you can't lobby. You can't go out and lobby what you want. So the nonprofits out there, I was discouraged that there was no nonprofit in transportation that didn't step in to help. People might consider that self-serving, though, since they might be making the money from the extra funds that come to you. So I think that's the best I could explain that I work at, and I would love to sit on a committee to help maybe paint that picture and how best to bring that out. You know, when they voted the open space tax, all these different parties came into play for that, and everybody got a little piece of the action, meaning some of the funds. So you get a senior center, you get a pool, you get all this mixture of things so it engages more people. So how in the heck do we do that with the roadways? How do we engage more people from different groups to want to go out and help lobby? They're the ones that have to go out and lobby for you. You guys can't go out and lobby. It's your hands are tied from the laws that are there.
Mark, got anything to add?
So Judge Judy said, that's not an answer. So no, I appreciate the fact that I've been able to serve Carson City, and at least this is my third board now for several years, and I really enjoy being a part of the community and being active and being a part of some of the decisions being made. So only thing I would appreciate one more time, you allow me to be involved with RTC, and that's I would close that.
Well, I think regardless of how the vote comes out here today, I think I speak for all of us up here. Thanks for everything you've done to make Carson City a better place. I mean, I know you've been active in trails, bikes, roads, the whole thing. You know, and it's not just been the last 2 years with RTC. So thanks for what you do for our city too. So we'll see where it goes today. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. All right. Where's Paul? Hello again, Paul. How you doing? Good. How are you? See, when was it we saw you last?
At least a couple months.
Couple.
Should I put this?
Yeah, put it on there.
Okay.
There you
And should I, for the record?
Yeah, Paul Corrado for the record there. Yeah, a couple months ago. You know, you're up against a guy who wants to get reappointed, been there 2 years. You guys have both got stellar resumes. You know, they're right up the alley of what your guys are asking for. So I don't, you know, this is going to be one of those hard decisions. But let me ask you, it's the same. We asked the same questions. You know that. Tell me what you think of the South Carson Street design and why.
Well, I have a master's degree in urban planning, and I'm wondering, the South Carson Street design, I believe, is good for maybe 15 or 20 years, but I think overall there's going to have to be at some point in time a much larger and much more sophisticated, if you will, intersection, especially at where the especially since I went to the public hearing before, and they were trying to push through design that was done in 1980 something and approved, and the environmental impact report was not upgraded.
I'm not certain I know that one, but I do know sort of what's happening with that intersection down on Spooner. I know we got a light issue down there, but you know, just so everybody knows that you know, the freeway is not complete yet, and it won't be complete legally or otherwise until they have an interchange down there at the Spooner intersection.
Exactly.
And that road has been financed mostly by cash. You get money and you go down, and so we've had to struggle. So has NDOT had to struggle a long time to make sure that, you know, they have sufficient money, because everybody wanted money in the state. So, you know, we're waiting to see, but in the meantime, you know, I think, where's Lucia? Is she back there? Mm-hmm. I think, you know, we owe the state somewhere around $7 million left on our obligation that we told them back when the freeway was getting started. We don't owe that until they finish that intersection down there. So, I mean, I get you that, and because I've been through that intersection on rush hour nights, rush hour times. It's not nice. So anyway, thank you for your answer, and thanks again, Paul, for your willingness to share your expertise. Like I said, you have a stellar resume. So, and we'll see if we can fix Marlette too as we go down the road. Okay.
Hi, Paul. If you had a crystal ball, what is your vision for regional transportation in the future for Carson City?
There's a couple of things.
There's a couple of things. First of all, we know that by about 2030, 2040, we're going to have a real crisis associated with how we fund these things because of the electric vehicles and how they're going to be. We're not going to be able to do it with gas tax. Those things keep going down and down, and I don't think it's going to go up because fossil fuels, et cetera, especially in the next 20 to 30 years. As a planner, that's what I see. That's a really big challenge. There's also all the growth out in Story County, and Highway 50 and the intersection at the freeway right now is probably level of service B at rush hour, and I can see nothing but we need right away there. And I don't know, the last time I looked, it was zoned for a casino, and how are you going to afford that? You know, it seems like the answer is always money, and I'm not sure that the steel wheel on the steel rail is still the most efficient of all transportation modes. But the way we develop cities, including this one, is an automobile-oriented. And so there's the biggest problem, I think, is we're trying to move, 2,000-pound machines that take up a space, 10 by 20 when they're parked, instead of a person who takes up 200 pounds or 150 pounds and takes up a couple of square feet. So I think at some point in time, when I just hate to see it get so bad like it is in California. I mean, one of the reasons I left after 23 years of working there to God's country here 15 years ago was because I could see what was going to happen with the traffic. And I think that's one of the major issues, is how are we going to fund things in the future? And secondly, what kind of a future is it going to be? Because if it's going to be automobiles or some form of personal transportation versus mass transportation, because the densities are too low in most of our situations, single-family detached residence does not give you enough to be able to really economically afford to do much in the other. So I think there's going to be some technology changes, and maybe Uber and things like that, which take advantage of the technology, will be the more efficient way. But there's going to be some significant challenges ahead, I believe.
Hello, Paul.
Hey, Brad, Chairman, I think of the Transportation Planning Commission. Are you?
My question for you is, over the next 2 years, if you're appointed to the RTC, where would your primary focus be? On maintenance of our roads or public transport, or do you consider them equally as important?
Well, if you give me just those two choices, I'll have to go with both. But because I've got a master's degree in planning, I look, a little bit forward. But I also have a degree in landscape architecture, and I'm a licensed landscape architect in both California as well as here, and have been. And so when I look at the things, I say, well, short term, you have to balance maintenance. You have to provide a decent road system, and there is a good road system here. I mean, I've been in places where it's not so good, and I've lived in 11 states here in the country and 3 foreign countries. And so I have a perspective. But if you don't look ahead, especially in the next, not just 2 years, but much further than that, with every decision that you make, with every, if you're not following the plan, it's plan the work and work the plan. That's where I'm at. I don't know if that provides the kind of perspective you were looking for.
There's no answer other than your thoughts.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Can you tell me what 3 issues you use to consider whether or not to approve a project?
Okay, the first one is, does it follow a master plan? Is it in line with what everybody who said we were going to do, we were going to do? Secondly, is it fiscally responsible? Can you do it within the time frame, or are you hoping for funds and betting on what's coming? And the third thing is, does it solve the problem? Are we dealing with the causes, or are we dealing with the effects?
You've done a good job of painting a relatively bleak future regarding funding, because you're absolutely correct. We're going to have a problem with descending gasoline tax revenues. The feds and the state have been absent without leave on these issues as far as I'm concerned, and our local people didn't go for the gas tax indexing. We're going to have to find the money somewhere, I think, sooner or later. How do you convince the public, the only public we have to rely on, apparently, to step up here locally, whether it's gas tax index or some other plan that you think would be better? But how do we convince them this is going to become a real problem and they need to step in now, or inflation will eat their pocketbooks?
I think when it comes down to making sure people have ownership in the decisions, and by that I mean it's going to take a PR effort by people, I believe, on the advisory commission to go to the, if there's neighborhood councils, there's a lot of clubs around here that I believe could be the springboard for understanding. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is, I grew up in the city of Chicago where the bond issues always passed. And the bond issues always passed because every child in the city in the 6th and 7th grade was given a booklet and 6 weeks on what happened and why is it important for us to pass bond issues, how does the government work, how is it funded, and how do you, and when you get people at that level, the kids bring the stuff home to the parents and work through the homework. And that, to me, those two things would be at least 2 avenues to pursue in order to, because I think it's a public relations issue, personally.
As another person, a native of Illinois, I always thought it was Richard J. Daley who got that done.
And he did. And I have a picture of me shaking hands with me at my Eagle ceremony.
Paul, just one little kind of a follow-up question I have. You mentioned Uber and Lyft is out there too.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody told me that a lot of the traffic in some of the larger metropolitan areas, particularly San Francisco, comes from the number of Uber and Lyft cars on the road. In other words, we're trying to get people out of their own cars. Now they're in their own cars hauling everybody else around. You ever experienced that?
I have.
I've not experienced, but what's your thought? Do you think that's really happening?
All I can tell you is I was in Washington, D.C., visiting a friend who's on his last legs this summer, and I was there for a week. And I I did not and would not ever, because I used to live in that town, actually in one of the suburbs for a couple of years, I would never either rent a car or own a car in the city unless I had a parking space for it. And I used Uber all over the city to visit friends, and I found it a lot cheaper and a lot easier. And I think the real issue is not just Uber on the road, because I could get them at 4 o'clock in the morning when my plane was late, but also, and most importantly, was I didn't have to deal with the parking issues. Now, I don't know if there's ever been a study done, but I'd never seen one where you count the number of parking spaces in a city versus the number of registered vehicles. And that would be an interesting, I think, study. The one that I did do for the county that I was in was the number of registered or the number of licensed persons, vehicle licensed persons, versus the number of people who were not licensed. And this was a suburban community on the other side. And what I found was that almost half of the people didn't have driver's licenses because they were either too young or too old or too poor to afford vehicles. Now, I believe everybody in this room probably came here by automobile.
I don't know Mark did. Mark, where did he keep my license? Oh, that's right, he's got that Quattro out there.
But all kidding aside, I think we have, the focus has always been on automobiles because that's where the people and the money and the people are going to complain about. But I think the jack and the underserved populations here to convenient and affordable transportation is a big deal.
I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me ask you a little off the record or off course question there. Anything you want to ask us? You know, to get that opportunity, anything? Okay.
No, I figure you'll be having me come to meetings and read the stuff before I get there, and I know the drill. I've spent 2 years in subdivision work for a park district, and so I listened to countless numbers of consultants talking about transportation issues associated with the subdivision that we're going to build. And so I'm relatively familiar with the jargon. I also spent time as a professional in rapid transit.
Very good. Thanks, Paul. Thank you very much.
Okay.
You're welcome to sit here now. We got to do the hard. This is not an easy day for a lot of different reasons, but now we do this. But this is probably the hardest decisions we have to make. So you're welcome to sit and listen to
The deliberations.
how Solomon slices the bread, I guess, is what they sometimes call it, something like that. Okay.
Well, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Paul. All right. All right.
I thought Solomon sliced the baby.
Pardon me?
I thought Solomon sliced the baby.
He sliced it. But here, board, we need to talk about it. Here's Mark has been here for 2 years. He's done a great job on there, and in terms of reappointment, I think, he's deserving of reappointment, but Paul has got the equal good as credentials. I mean, they're thoughtful individuals, but I think in one sense, I guess it's kind of fairness. I mean, Mark's been doing it for 2 years. Give him a little bit more time to continue to do that and go down the road. But that's my own 2 cents, folks, so.
I share the same sentiment. He's well-informed and well-positioned to move RTC forward in this next 2 years. I'd like to see him complete the direction, and I know he works well with everyone on the board, and that's important too. So that's my vote.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Don't have to, don't want to. Okay. Want to try a motion?
I move to appoint Mark Kimbrough to the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission to fill a term that expires in December of 2020.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. What did I do there? All right. Mark, you're in for 2 years. Paul, please hang with us, please. Thanks.
I don't see any. I don't see Steve. Is Ernie out there?
They out there? Darren? Anybody there? Anybody home?
And Alexander has withdrawn. Is Frank Rohde here? Oh, okay.
Where's Frank? Hi, Frank. I didn't see you there. How you doing? Okay. And Alexander, is he here?
No, he pulled.
Oh, he
He
pulled.
pulled, but, and I don't
So-
see the other two.
So we have one applicant for
Two positions.
what?
Two positions.
3 for 2.
3 for 2. Okay. All right.
That's here.
Pardon me?
The only one that's here.
Yeah. Frank, come on up. How you doing? Haven't seen you for a while. How you doing? The old Aloha medicinal days, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Finally retired.
Yeah, you. So,
Thank you.
Paul, I know you've been CFO. Let me ask you this question. It might be simple a question, but tell me why an audit committee is important or not important.
Mayor, ever since education, after my college at USC, I worked for Price Waterhouse Los Angeles for 6.5 years. And of course, I adapted to many, many, many different circumstances of audits that I led. And at Price Waterhouse, the factor was internal control. If you audited for internal control, you probably had no problems with the numbers. Obviously, you're going to have budget issues, you're going to have cash issues and all that stuff. But actually, as it comes to fraud and things being done right, the enforcement that was drilled into me through the Price Waterhouse days was all about internal control. And I've used that I've worked for public companies, New York Stock Exchange companies, and I have enforced that all the way, and I've never had a problem.
What's the distinction, if there is one, between an internal auditor and an audit committee?
In my opinion, I have not been on an audit committee before. Internal audit, in my opinion, gets into some of the details. Was the invoice for $429.36 paid for $429.36? Was there receipts? Was there the proper documentation, et cetera? Audit committee, in my opinion, would be responsible for more of the umbrella. Are there internal controls? Did the external auditors come up with any items that should be discussed, should be implemented, et cetera, as well as the internal auditors? I believe it would be more of a discussion on the broad-based internal, the results and recommendations or proposed adjustments of both internal auditors and the external auditors.
Welcome, and thank you for applying.
Well, thank you, Karen.
In your experience, what are some of the significant risks and/or exposures that you have brought to the attention of directors that could affect their operations?
Again, going back, since I've been in industry since I had 6.5 years with Price Waterhouse, and I've been in industry ever since. So I guess you're asking me to go back to the days, my Price Waterhouse days. Or now it's PwC. That's what shows my age. It goes back to internal control. If there were problems with internal control, people had dual duties, they did not have the proper segregation of duties, et cetera. People that would go beyond their lines of authority, in approving things or expensing things. As I recall, some of them it was contractual issues, non-compliance with contracts, both as to funding and or spending as to income. I'm dating myself a lot going back, but it was all similar to what I just explained.
Hello, Frank.
Good afternoon.
Have you had a chance to review our budget, the Carson City budget?
I have not, sir. I'm a new resident. I just moved here in July from Reno. I was up in the Galena Forest area, and I retired and came to Carson City.
So my question for you was going to be, what are your thoughts on where we might be lacking in controls? But I'm going to change that to, what process would you use to determine where we may or may not be lacking in controls?
Again, I'm not sure of the position and what the definition of it is, and I have no problem being retired. In fact, I'd love to have some of the mental stimulation and get involved with audit committees, both internal and external, in details and on special projects. But it would be at the level that the people and the details would come up with. I just not sure of the audit committee, how big of an umbrella it is at this time. I don't know. I can't answer it. I'm sorry.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, can you give me two criteria you would use to select audits for internal control review to recommend to the Board of Supervisors?
Budgets, are they met? I'm always been, this is me personally as well as in companies, I'm not a debt guy. You don't solve debt problems with more debt. So I would really emphasize budgets and the compliance to them and and I also would believe in reserves. You know, the rainy day fund, you know, I just have read about it. I've never dealt with it because I have not worked for a government before. But I really believe you can't have too much cash, okay? And so I always believe in rainy day funds, what I have read about, and that I would emphasize the budgets at balance and emphasizing extra money for when things don't go as well.
Well, I'm going to ask the question I wrote down, though. What you just said prompted another question in my head. I'll
Yes, sir.
ask it some other time. Since you're new to Carson City, you may or may not know we have a fraud hotline for people who call in and say, see a problem. Give me your view of those, just generally speaking, since you wouldn't know exact details of ours.
Well, you know, I do not know. I did not know you have a fraud line. And I guess, you know, being lucky, I don't know if it's lucky or what, but even through all my audit days of major corporations, and I was a major auditor on Jet Propulsion Lab, Caltech, large companies, I have been very fortunate not to have been confronted with fraud. So I can answer it. I think fraud line is excellent. The good news is that it probably brings up some issues that people should look into. The bad news is there's going to be a heck of a lot of time experiencing them and delving into the situation to find out what's right and wrong.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions, Board? Frank, anything you want to add?
Nothing other than I think my education experience in finance, management, and accounting would suit the position as I have read the Finance Committee's duties are.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Now,
All right.
should I leave when the others come in?
Oh, he can stay.
Okay, thank you.
Which one do you want next?
Oh.
How you doing, Steve?
Good, how are you?
Good. How's the afternoon treating you?
Very good.
All right.
Wind's picking up, storm's moving in, so hopefully we'll get some precip.
Christmas Day, man.
Yep.
Snow.
Let's hope.
Snow. Steve, let me just ask you this question. It's a general question. You've been on the audit committee for a while. Tell me why you think the audit committee is important or not important.
I think we've made some progress over, it's been 2 years, so, last time I sat before you guys. We made some progress, I think, with changing auditors. Ide Bailey's moved in as the internal audit function. One of the first things we had him do was a risk assessment. We hadn't done a risk assessment in, I don't know how long, probably 4 or 5 years. I think that's going to help us refine and kind of make best use of the dollars we got available for the internal audit function. And it's an important part of the internal control structure for any entity, and especially a city, with all the intricacies and complexities that Carson City has. I think it's been pretty effective, the way that we're managing it. So important, and just overall internal control structure. And I think it's helpful to give some assurance to the public that there's oversight of functions within the city.
Hi, Stephen. Thank you for reapplying.
Hey, Karen. Thank you.
In your experience, what are some significant risks or exposures that you have brought to the attention of directors in the past, in your past experience or now, that could affect their operations?
I think one of the ones that we kind of kicked off, maybe it was about a year ago, is starting to look at the IT security, especially with all the stuff that's been going on with the Facebook breach and Equifax breach. Just making sure that our internal controls around the infrastructure for the IT is as good as it can be. We've tabled some of that, based on the new ERP system that's coming in. But I think that's an important area that we got to pay attention to. We do have citizens' data that's sensitive, and I realize that we have a kind of a umbrella with the state on IT security, but it's important that we test it and make sure that it's working the way we think that it's working. Other areas, and as far as in the current role with the city, some of the stuff that we've done with the accounts payable audit was, kind of eye-opening as far as some of the issues that we encountered there, and making sure that we, are addressing all the, again, internal issues with accounts payable, and making sure that we don't have duplicate payments between credit cards and the check cutting process. We've started looking at some of the bidding processes and making sure that we've got adequate controls over the independent contractors that are coming into the city, and making sure that we understand who's contracting with the city, and making sure that we've followed all the policies and procedures there to make sure that not only it's bid right, but the cost is with market, and the city's getting a fair shake on that deal. So those are a few of the areas, just as they relate to the city. Prior roles and actually current roles that I have as a part-time CFO for 4 different companies. Actually just working with the boards and the CEOs to make sure that the finance function is working as adequately as efficiently as possible based on the money that we have available, and making sure that the business has cash flow and understands their cash flows to optimize the capital that they have to put to work, and help the business survive. Thanks.
Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Brad.
After your review of the budget, and my question is similar to Karen's, and you partially answered it, so maybe you can just expound on it. But after your review of the budget, where do you believe we may still be lacking in controls?
The budget, and just in general with the audits that we've done over the last couple of years, There's a couple areas I'd like to revisit. One of them was an audit that was done back in 2014, and it took a couple years to close out all the findings that we had around cash handling. It's cash is cash, and it's easy to lose control of it. So that's one area I would like to potentially tee up as another audit in the next year or so. Potentially, we do have some openings in this year's audit plan, so that's one area that we might be considering. Also, going back and looking at accounts payable and making sure that we've got tight controls around that. One of the functions that I suggested was having an accounts payable audit firm come in and take a look at our accounts payable. What they do is they basically work on commission, like literally 100% commission, and they go through and audit your accounts payable, look for duplicate payments, look for payments that weren't in compliance with the contract that was signed, or look for overpayments just in general based on the invoice that was submitted. And if they find anything, they have to go out and recover it from the supplier, and then they take some kind of commission, usually like around 30% of the recoveries that they actually recoup. They keep, and then 70% of it comes back into the city as upside cash that you didn't really anticipate. Those are a couple areas. I think with any city, there's probably areas for improvement as far as making sure that every function's working as effectively as possible. And, we're relying on the city, department managers and so forth to make sure that they're applying resources as effectively as possible to provide the best value for the citizens. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Steve.
Hey, Lori.
Can you give me 2 criteria you will be using to pick which audits we recommend be performed over this next year?
Well, one thing is that risk assessment that Ide Bailey's completed. I think that's going to be very helpful in helping us, focus our budget to audits that make the most sense. I'm hoping at the next committee meeting here in January that we can spend some time, going through that risk assessment. And then just in general, based on what's going on with the ERP conversion, seeing what areas we can kind of, since it's getting so close to where we're going to be implementing, next calendar year, staying away from those areas and focusing on areas that we may want to pay attention to now, and then, kind of shift our resources to stuff around the new ERP system after the implementation is complete to make sure that the controls got put in the way that we expected them to go in. You're welcome.
I'm sure you're aware the city has a fraud abuse hotline. Give me your views on that as a technique for keeping track.
The 2 years that I've been on the committee, we haven't had anything really substantial come across the line. It's been just odd kind of one-off stuff for the most part, issues with, I didn't get my tax bill or something like that. It's a good internal control. I've had it at several companies I've worked at and had it basically outsourced like we do to a third party, so that there's a independent resource for people to go to, whether it's employees of the city or citizens, to go report issues that they find in their dealings with the city. It's effective from an internal control standpoint to have that independent resource for people to go to when they don't feel they're getting the right answers or the answers that they should be getting. You're welcome.
Any other questions? Anything from us? Any
no, it's been, I came on to the audit committee 2 years ago. A few months later, they asked me to step in as the chair. It's been a rewarding experience. I actually enjoy and look forward to the audit committee meetings. The way that we went about selecting the new auditors, both external and internal, I think could have been handled a little better, and I'm hoping that we can address those policy issues here in the next year or so to make sure that there's more independence between the finance function and who's selecting the actual auditors. But it's been an honor, and I think we did end up with the best, both internal and external auditors, that we could get for the money that we're spending. So I think it's a win-win, and I'm pretty happy with the selection the selection in the end there. So. And I look forward to potentially, maintaining a chair seat or, still being on the audit committee going forward and helping the city make sure that we've got sound internal controls, kind of throughout the system.
Well, we want to thank you for your service on the audit committee. And I don't know if you listened to us when we discussed the CAFR, Consolidated Financial Report. One of the things that at least disturbed me, and has anything to do with your appointment, but just so you know, was, some of the communication we got from them in written form was, put it a polite way, had grammatical errors, had typographical errors in it, and it just occurred to me that it's not something I would have let come out of when I was working. I wouldn't let that come out of my office. So, I don't know what that says about attention to detail, but I give that to you because, otherwise it was a good accounting firm. I didn't see that out of Eide Bailey. I didn't see errors like that. But anyway, if they're listening, they'll probably know that it's not something we routinely run across when we have outside auditors.
I would expect it to be. I haven't talked to Sherry or Nancy about the CAFRA yet, but looking forward to that discussion. And it's got to be professional. That's a
better word than I did.
That's a minimum bar that I would expect them to achieve.
Right. So, any other questions? All right. I didn't mean to raise that, but I think it was an issue that we all were concerned about. So,
no, I appreciate the feedback.
All right. Very good. You're welcome to hang around.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Ernie Mayhorn is next. Is he here?
Yep, he is.
Can't see out there. Hi, Ernie. How you doing, Ernie?
Good, how are you?
Good. How you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good. Well, first of all, let me say thanks for your service on the audit committee.
Oh, of course, I've enjoyed it, thank you.
I know you're up for reappointment. After you've been on here a little bit, give me your thoughts on whether you think it's a valuable committee and not valuable committee and how it interacts with the internal auditor function.
I think it's a very valuable committee. One of the things that I did notice, one of the nice things that I saw when I first got on the committee was a pleasant surprise is how well the city is run compared to other cities. And you can see that from the audits. We're done. You're done? Yeah. No, I've been involved with other cities, and also our internal auditor would tell us during our meetings that you guys are lucky. You don't know how bad some other cities are ran. So that was a nice, pleasant surprise. So then we take a look at it as, well, we're not going to be totally we're going to be totally in their face about things. Now it's just making sure that things are bumped straight and going, and that's what our job has been, and to keep the internal auditors going with that. And I think it's a very valuable part because the city's being run well. Let's keep it going, running the same way.
Thank you for reapplying.
Thank you.
In your experience, what are some significant risks and/or exposures that you have brought to the attention of directors that could affect their operations?
Myself personally or the committee? Myself personally, no, I don't do that. I just work within the committee. I think what we've been there really more is just guidance. We'll get a report back and we'll notice that there's a couple of instances of cash handling issues. So we'll ask them to, let's really double check the cash handling, make sure the cash is porous, and let's make sure that really gets taken care of cleanly. So me personally, no, I haven't done it, but I think as a committee, we've done it that way.
Hi, Ernie.
Hey, Brad.
After your first 2 years on the committee, can you tell me your personal thoughts on where we still might be lacking in control?
We haven't gone through all the departments yet. I think the next meeting is supposed to be setting up the plan for the rest of the year, where we're probably picking up most of the rest of the departments. Cash is always an issue. I guess, any department that handles cash is always an issue. And where we have the most instances of issues, it tends to be cash as the overabundance of problems. So I guess I would say cash, but that's probably not unique to your city. It's probably unique. It's the way it is everywhere. So I think it's just cash. I mean, you just have to watch the cash. Not that there's ever been any issues that we've seen, but that's where the problem is.
So Ernie, as you know, we're going to get the risk assessment.
Yes.
I think, next meeting. So what are 2 criteria you would use to help us pick which audits we want to recommend?
It's like you have the same cold I do. Well, I think it's a combination of what hasn't been done yet and what's been done and had a lot of exceptions that we needed to follow. And those are the criteria that I'd be looking at. And I know we've got a list of departments that haven't been done yet. I'd be taking a look at that and where the risk lies with, if they're high-risk departments or low-risk departments. And then if we've had one that had a lot of exceptions, maybe it's time to go back and revisit to see if they fixed those.
As you know, the city has a fraud abuse hotline program system. Could you give me your view or views on that?
We don't seem to, in my estimation, don't seem to get a lot of calls into it, and the calls we get have to do more with the state, not with us. So I don't know if it's not publicized well. I just don't know. I think it's very valuable to have something like that. Maybe we should publicize it more, but we've got very little calls on that that I know of. We get reports at every meeting, and it's usually no calls. One call had nothing to do with us, had to do with the state. That's pretty much the calls that we get.
Thank you.
But very valuable resource, no question.
Any questions of us?
No.
Okay. Board? You know, you can sit there if you want. Don't worry about it. Don't. You know, it occurs to me, Board, and that, you know, we're kind of in the same position we were with the RTC appointments. We've got, you know, people who have been on the board for a couple of years and have done a good job looking for reappointment. And you got, in this case, you have a third person, Frank, you know, Royd coming in. I've known Frank for a long time, or haven't seen him since he's been in retirement, but I've watched his work in one of the private companies here, and he's very good at what he does. He'd make an excellent member, but my sense is that, you know, we should probably give those 2 who have been there for a couple of years a chance to finish out and go on. So that's my own 2 cents on it.
I'll just say, having served with both Ernie and Steve, they are they provide wonderful service to the community. And so with that, I don't see a reason to make a change. They come to every meeting, they're prepared at every meeting, they contribute at every meeting, and they really help us make the decisions of where we're going to go. So they're valuable members, and therefore I want to support their reappointments.
It's good information. All right. All right. Who wants, you make a motion.
I will, be honored.
Have you made a motion yet today?
One.
One? Okay. all
Yeah,
right.
you guys should have me have a cold more often. No. I move to appoint Stephen Ferguson and Ernie Mayhorn to serve on the Carson City Audit Committee, each for a term that expires on December 31st, 2020.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you very much, Ernie. Frank, keep in mind, it's difficult on these where there's a reappointment because you got it.
Not a problem.
All right, Frank. All right. I'm glad to have you back in Carson City.
Whether it be a special projects or whatnot, or the accounting or city manager or whatnot, I'd be more than happy to do that on special projects.
Very good. Thanks, Frank. Okay. All right. Board, I think we just want to take a break.
Yes.
Huh?
Yep.
All right, we're in recess for 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Take care. right, we ready? Thanks for bearing with us here. Take a little break. All right, we're now going to take up next to last item other than public comment. We're going to take up item 23 alpha. This is the potential franchise agreement with Waste Management for a 15-year term with the option of 2-year extensions. Who's doing this? Darren, Rick? Oh, excuse me, I have Brad. Supervisor Bunkowski has a disclosure to make on.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I am a partner in the real estate brokerage firm of NAI Alliance Carson City. In that capacity, my office represented 2 of the 5 proposer companies in acquiring real property locations in anticipation of being able to receive the waste collection contract. Although Waste Management is not one of the companies my office represented, I feel that the judgment of a reasonable person in this situation may be materially affected because there is the possibility that my office's clients may still be considered for the contract if the contract is not awarded to Waste Management. Therefore, I will not be voting or participating on this matter.
Any other disclosures? I don't see any. Now you can go. Carol, you're going to
I'll
hit the
just
top line?
introduce it, yeah. Carol
Top
Akers.
line stuff, go ahead.
Purchasing and contracts, yes, this is to approve contract 1819-041 for the new collection services franchise agreement with Waste Management for the 15-year term with the 2-year renewal option. We have Rick, obviously, here, and Carissa and Darren to kind of answer all the formal questions, but it's been, over a year in the making, so they'll kind of.
Rick Cooley, Public Works, Mayor, members of the board, we're finally here, so we'll see how today goes. But I'm here with Carissa. We've provided a short presentation to give you.
It's been 19 years since you've been here.
I wish. It's the presentation we'll give you today has a different flavor than before. Before we talked in generalities, whatnot. Now we're getting to the specifics. You guys saw the dollars and cents in the packet, able to see exactly how things laid out. We're going to give you kind of an overview of what the services are and what we can expect, and then we'll open it up for some comments from you guys and see where we want to go. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, honorable board members, it's a pleasure to be with you again today. Thank you for having me. We were directed to move forward with negotiations with Waste Management, and we did so. We had 4 key goals that we were looking to achieve in this process. The first was the strengthening of the customer service agreement language to ensure that a robust customer service provision would be provided to all customers and that there would be remedies in place in the case of any issues that would come forward. We also wanted to look at some of the rates. The residential rates were the lowest. The commercial rates were by far the lowest, but there were some higher rates for the on-call roll-off and compactor customers, so we wanted to address that and see if additional value could be provided for those customers. There were a few fees we wanted to take a look at and see if we could bring those down or eliminate them. And then also there had been some language changes proposed by the company and then also required by the city that we needed to negotiate and see if we could put into place. Throughout the process, I can report that Waste Management was responsive. They did respond to any of our requests for information in a timely manner. They provided timely communications, and they have agreed to all of the changes that have been required and requested by the city through this process. For the customer service performance standards, we took to heart the feedback from the board and from the community throughout the process and developed a very strong contract so that regardless of which service provider was selected, you would have consistent service. It included requirements such as the local call center, requirements for speed of answering the phone call, resolution of issues, liquidated damages if issues were not resolved, and other remedies for the city as well. We took it a step further as we strengthened that language to have even stronger repercussions if there are failures, and then also the ability for the city to terminate if you're unhappy and the contractual requirements are not met as written. You will have a local customer service office. You will have strong customer communication with a city-specific website, not just a page that's on a corporate website, but your own website with city-specific information and ways for the residents or other customers to contact Waste Management and request different services or report issues that need to be resolved. We included in the contract additional tools for communication so that there wouldn't be some of the standard concerns that we heard during the public feedback where the customer wasn't sure why a service wasn't provided. Now they will get notices and understand why and have a means to address the issue or to contact the company and move forward in a productive manner. And then also another piece that we heard was that a lot of folks didn't know, what can you recycle? What's the program? What's going on? So we included a very comprehensive requirement for public education that would not only be part of the rollout of the program, but also repeat every 5 years of the contract. So there would be continual education. And then, of course, as any new customers come in, when anyone starts service, they would receive that educational material as well. We also looked at just really strengthening the components of the contract where the city could say that they were unhappy with the performance of customer service. So we added customer service performance failure as an event of default subject to termination with some very strong language. We also provided some language that if there are issues that are not corrected as required by the contract, then a corrective action plan would be put in place. And this corrective action plan could even include some escalated liquidated damages that go beyond those that are just the standard part of the contract. So the city has the opportunity to get any company's attention and make sure that the services are provided and that the city's needs are met. This is very effective in making sure that your city never falls beneath the radar, that you're always front and center and a priority for Waste Management, because they certainly would not want to trigger any of these fines or issues, because the cumulative impact would be very detrimental. Finally, just looking at a single liquidated damage, there is a number of liquidated damages that are included to make sure that services are provided in a timely manner, that issues are resolved as they should be. But for the customer service incidents, Waste Management agreed for us to up the individual incident amount from $100 per incident to $300 per incident. So again, that amount starts to snowball quite quickly if in fact there were to be issues. With that said, our goal in putting together a contract isn't to have remedies, it's to have good service. And so really, we want to have these items in place to ensure that the service is provided. Our hope is that you never have to trigger any of these. That is what we would like to see. We would like to see great service take place, but this gives both the impetus for the provision of that service as well as the safety net for the city should there be any lack of follow-through in what is required and what you have expected as a result of this process. Waste Management was asked to provide some early implementation. Their proposal was for services to start July 1st of 2019. We asked them, what can you do before the contract even starts so that we can be certain that customers start receiving excellent customer service as soon as possible, and so that the transition process, the rolling out of the new services, containers, et cetera, is really smooth and the customers know where they can call and will get the response and the service that they need. Waste Management has agreed and has included as part of the contract that would be signed if you were to approve this contract, to have the call center fully functional by April 1st. I believe that they have many of the components lined up and ready to go pending a vote so that it can move forward and quickly, because we're talking just months out for this to occur. So fully functional call center by April 1st. The local phone number is now operational and is being promoted in a number of different ways, billing inserts and signage on vehicles, et cetera, decals. And then also they're providing a recycling calendar now so that folks can get that information sooner than at the start of new services. And then finally, the new website will be up by February 1st. versus a July 1st rollout. So we asked them to step up, and these were the deliverables and the early implementation components that they've agreed to and that they have agreed to have added as part of the contract. When we asked for Waste Management to take a look at the roll-off and compactor rates and the vertical compactor rates, they came back with, for the vertical rates, a reduced rate structure, and then for the temporary service, this is the one-time, not a monthly subscription service, but the one-time cleanup type service for roll-offs or for compactors, they agreed to keep the current 2018 rate structure in place going into the new contract. So there's rate stabilization there, and it's a better value for the customers. We also talked through the vacation service suspensions and restart fees for vacancies. Again, we focused on this because it was a key piece of feedback from the community during the community feedback sessions. What would it look like if my rental property is vacant for a few months and we have mandatory service? Will I have to pay for service I'm not receiving? What if I'm a resident and I regularly go out of town for 3 months over the winter, or will I have to pay for service? So we had included in the contract an opportunity for those services to be suspended and for there to be maintenance fees or for there to be restart fees, and Waste Management's agreed to eliminate those. So if folks go on vacation, they notify the company that they're going on vacation between a month and no more than 6 months. Then there's no maintenance fee. They just call when they get back and the service is restarted. With the fees for the rentals, if there's not a change in the owner of the property and the carts stay on the residents or stay in place, they're not taken off and redelivered and a whole new billing is set up, then there's not even a restart fee for that. So it's very resident friendly and addresses some of the specific worries that some of the folks had going into a mandatory service program. And then we took a look at some of the other potential fees. For example, if a commercial company wants to have some bulky items removed, or residential customers look for bulky items beyond the number of items that they were going to have, we worked on some of those fees, getting them down, and then also eliminating some of the other fees on just the customer requested services. These aren't part of the standard services. So we feel strongly that this provides a good value for your customers. I don't have this on the slide, but I did want to mention also the new CPI process provides a further value to the community because it's based on, it's not just a full CPI applied to the entire rate. It takes the disposal element out. If the landfill rates do not go up, there's no increase for that portion of the rate, and that's something that is a new and added benefit, which will kind of compress any rate increases as they go forward. And that's again another benefit and something really important for a long-term contract, so that you don't see the rates and fees escalate over time. So we agreed upon a methodology and formula, and it should serve the city well. Looking at some of the highlights for the new agreement, this does include the automated collection with carts of solid waste, recycling, and green waste. Residents can have bulky item collections of up to 4 items per year. This can be 4 items at a single pickup or 4 individual pickups of individual items. And an individual item includes up to 6 bags, 35-gallon or smaller, or larger bags if they just aren't filled beyond the parameters of the 3 by 3 by 3 and the 50 pounds. So up to 6 of those bags counts as 1 item or boxes. So it's a good amount of material that can be removed. There's also the complimentary Christmas tree collection, which is always useful. Commercial and multifamily services include optional recycling and green waste, and then also optional bulky item electronic waste and universal waste collection if they are to request it at an additional fee. And then finally, we did include a number of ongoing and then some new services to benefit the city. This will serve the city well over the course of the next 15 years. You have the city cleanup service for temporary cleanup programs at centralized locations. Currently, there's 2 per year, but you can have up to 4 per year if you were to want to do that. There's also collection services for any of the special events that the city has, as long as it's a no fee for entry type event. It's a not-for-profit type event. This would include the recycling, the solid waste collection. Neighborhood cleanups will be scheduled, and this would be a great opportunity to put additional bulky items out curbside, and again, just keep folks from the illegal dumping that we heard a lot about, and the beautiful rivers and forests, and it's just another way to prevent materials from being placed out inappropriately. The city will have on-call bulky item service when the city calls. The items will be collected by Waste Management in this contract, and then the recycling drop-off site at the Carson City sanitary landfill will be managed and serviced by the company. Some additional offerings from Waste Management is the use of clean diesel fleet in Carson City, which I know the quality of the air is important to many of the residents. We did hear a good amount of that during the feedback from the community. And then also, just as an added bonus, there's some solar compactors that the company has offered to provide. These can be used, say, in downtown or really anywhere that the city prefers. They compact the material with sunlight and have to be serviced less frequently, but can be a nice addition to the city.
On that issue, Rick or Darren, you made, who put out one of the solar compactor trash receptacles in McFadden Plaza just to try it? Who was that? Which company or who did that?
Yeah, I think Waste Management was the one that put it out there. The one right off the backside of McFadden on 3rd Street there was out there for a while, yes.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to know that.
So in conclusion, we achieved the goals that we were directed to achieve through the negotiations, the stronger language that incentivizes the strong service and gives you the ability to make corrections if for any reason that were to not occur. An early implementation plan, which should really be beneficial through the rollout of the new services and the new programs and help to address any ongoing issues right now. The changes to the rates came through as we asked, as well as the elimination or reduction of some of the fees, and then the language changes where we wholesale on certain sections said the city does not prefer to change the language, and Waste Management agreed to rescind their request for changing the language on a number of critical sections, and then they added language at our request to the benefit of the city. So we believe that with these concessions and then the strength of the initial proposal, which did include the lowest residential rates and low commercial rates, and that met all of the requirements of the procurement process, which was a result of the competitive environment that this board and the city created for this process. It certainly put the pressure on all the participants to put forward their best offer. We do believe that this puts a strong value forward for the Carson City residents and businesses, and will serve the community well for the next 15 years.
Carissa, I have two questions, actually. One, in the height of fall around here, biweekly green waste collection isn't really adequate for a lot of neighborhoods. We've got a lot of fall leaf drop. So what's the workaround on that? That's the first question.
There's a number of options available for those specific residents who have that issue, and it allows those residents to request additional service without having the cost of that additional service be spread among all the ratepayers and those who might not need that service. First, you can have multiple green waste carts to store the materials, which you can have up to 96 gallon.
But you have to have room to do that.
You do have to have room for those. That is correct. If you do have room, and hopefully with a larger property that generates that amount of material, there hopefully would be room for that. But if not, the residents are not precluded from placing the green waste or the pine needles, because I understand pine needles are certainly a big part of this. They're not precluded from placing those into their solid waste carts. That's not disallowed. So that's an option. As part of the bulky item service, they could choose for every other week for four different times to have 6 bags collected. There will be the additional collection of service during the bulky item events for the city. And then also, residents who need to could add an additional solid waste can for $6.91 per month. That could be used exclusively for pine needles if they prefer. We understand that our goal is certainly to divert as much of the green waste as possible to composting, but there's certain places where there's a certain amount of volume, and some folks may need to use both options, and so that's available for them as well. So and it's a really, actually relatively, in comparison to many communities I've worked in, pretty low-cost option to have that additional cart for the $6.91, or even beyond that, residents have a reasonable rate for requesting additional bulky item collection. So say they were to have a large cleanup in their yard and they'd already used all 4 of their additional collections of up to 6 bags, they could then just contact Waste Management through the website, through the phone, and arrange an additional collection for the fee that's been negotiated for the city. So there's a lot of different options that are available for those residents. And at the same time, for those who don't need it, there's no additional costs that are spread out among the community for those folks.
Second question, and Waste Management may want to answer this, and it's a concern, and I have to express it. My folks lived in San Jose, and they lived in fear and dread of the garbage police, as they put it. So, in PR relations going forward, which don't need to get worse, how do we address folks, not putting the right things in the right containers and, getting service,
Sure.
getting red tagged, so to speak? I'm concerned about that. So I don't know if someone wants to address that.
I'd like to speak to that first, if I may, and then if you'd like to get further information directly from the company, then absolutely. San Jose and much of the Bay Area has a punitive system in place, and they actually include, and part of the reason why their rates are so high is they actually have staff that go around and are the police who go and check and tag the containers. That is not a part of this contract. There aren't any of those police, so to speak. However, if, say, a recycling vehicle driver were to see, as they're emptying the recycling into the truck, bags of trash just falling in, or if there was to be an overstuffed bag of, tons of trash inside the recycling cart, which contaminates the load and is not the purpose of the recycling cart. If you need that additional trash cart, you need to pay the $6.91 and get the additional trash cart if you need it. There's a notice system, and it's an informational notice. It's not a punitive notice that informs the customer, you need to stop doing this. This container needs to have these materials. You can either have this container collected. If they leave the container without it being collected, the customer has the option of either placing the material in with their trash to be collected, or really that's their option. Place it in with the trash, and then they can place appropriate items into the recycling cart. Really the worst thing that could happen is after multiple issues, and once it's brought up and reporting to the contract administrator, if there's multiple notices, then it could be that Waste Management and the contract administrator decide that customer can't have a recycling cart anymore. That would be the worst thing that could happen. And there would be no change to their rates. They would continue to have their trash service. And There's no fines or penalties. So really, what we have in place here is an educational system, and it's really just to make sure that we don't have issues with contamination, because then entire loads would be rejected, and we don't want to see that happen. The same would be the case for commercial customers. If when a bin is being serviced and it's a recycling bin, and the recycling bins are available at a reduced rate, it can't be used for trash. So if it is found to be used for trash, then there's a notice. And after a certain number of notices, then either the customer can reassess whether or not they have enough capacity for the trash they generate. Maybe they need additional service days or a larger size bin, or within the parameters of the contract, their opportunity to participate in recycling could just be taken away, and they would just have to have trash bins. So that would be the most punitive thing that could happen, and it would require multiple instances after education.
In the interest of education and in the interest of saving people from having to go through that, Lori's sticker idea is a great idea. Can there be something on the can that says for the only?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to avoid.
The cans will have that, will indicate what goes into each can, as will the bins. And then also there will be educational materials that are provided. So when the bins are delivered, there will be a packet of information. This is what you put in each, so that folks can learn. The website will say what they can put into each bin and what's allowed. There's always a ramp-up period of time when you're rolling out a new program. It can be confusing. In the Bay Area, what typically happens is recyclables are placed in the trash, and that's where you get dinged. There's not a law that requires folks to recycle, so while they have the cart, they could choose not to use it and put the recyclables in the trash. There's no penalty for those folks. It's unfortunate, but that's their choice. There's no penalty, and there's no action that Waste Management could take to cause them any trouble. There's no tag or notice if you put either green waste or recycling into the trash cart. So it's a customer-friendly, because that isn't the type of contract that was established, and those aren't the laws that this community has chosen to have in place. So is that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So, I have two. Do I have to keep the extra cart all year, or can I ask for the extra cart to get through the leaf season and then return the extra cart? So maybe I only want to pay $6.91 for 3 months.
It's a subscription-based service, so
I can turn it off.
You can turn it off.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
can turn it off.
clarifying on
And,
the record. I read it that way, but I want to make sure they do.
It's once per year, though,
Quarter.
with the delivery, as far as that goes. If you were to say, for 2 months you want the extra, then you want them to take it away, then bring it back 2 months later, and that could cause some challenges. But once a year, you get a free delivery of an extra cart, and actually, if you're going to pay for the cart, it's yours.
I just want to make sure
Yes. You do
it's
not have-
delivery once a year, but again, I might only want to keep
You
it
are not
the
obligated.
3
You can cancel
months.
the extra cart service at any time.
Okay,
And in fact, you can.
because that will help solve the
Yes.
issue.
Yes,
to be able to
absolutely.
do
So you can
that.
cancel that extra cart, and after the carts are rolled out as well, if a resident, especially some of the senior folks, if they find that the carts are
Too big.
larger than what they need, they can request a smaller cart and swap that out, and that's a great option for them as well. So.
Okay, and then my other question really goes to the implementation of the senior low-income rate. And so while I recognize it's in here and they get to pay 75%, and I saw it's by application that the senior must do and provide some identification and then his tax return or other form, but I'm more interested in how you're going to get the message out so that the individual recognizes they could potentially be eligible for that reduced rate.
As part of the contract, and this would apply to any of the companies that participate in this process, there are notifications prior to the rollout of the program that let them know what's coming. So we're planning on 2 notifications, the senior rate, and then also those who have the proof of using the landfill on a monthly basis and want to request to opt out. And so they will be notified both in writing through the educational materials. It will be on the website. It will be part of what the Carson City specific customer service agents are educated on. This is what's available. These are the requirements, and this is the form. The company will have either a PDF version of the form that can be downloaded, or a web-based application, depending on what comes up on what they're able to do with their site. But either way, there will be information on the website. And then also, there should be some notification on the city website and a comprehensive campaign. Tell people multiple times in multiple ways so they understand what's available to them.
Well, I'm really interested, and I appreciate all of that, but
Okay.
I've worked lots and lots of programs.
Okay.
And the group that we're talking about is not necessarily web page tech savvy.
Sure.
And so I'm very interested that when you do that initial rollout and you're going to put all this information out, just go ahead and include the form so that they can fill it out, make the photocopy of what they need to, and mail it back into you. Because what I don't want you to do is force them to have to go into your office on Deer Run Road. So that's really what I'm after, is that you make it convenient and recognize we don't have a Jack bus stop there. We don't have, I want to make it that
As convenient, yes.
yeah, because this group does not necessarily have transportation, does not necessarily have a computer. And so anything you can do to help accommodate that, because again, you're promising us customer service. So, thank you.
If I
Whatever
may,
you want to
as
hear from Waste Management on either your issue or the issue that,
They're shaking their head, but they could come put it on the record.
Moving forward and just addressing the garbage release issue.
Before he speaks, I just wanted to mention that as part of the rollout of that program, while it's something that's implemented by Waste Management so as to not take up staff time, the actual rollout is to be approved by staff. And so if in 1 year you're unhappy with how it's rolled out, you can say, nope, we don't like that. Let's change it. So it's under your, yes, it is managed by the city as far as making sure it meets your requirements. They just have to do it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Greg Martinelli. I'm going to try and remember everything that you said, but what Carissa had mentioned, the containers are going to be marked, so the green waste container on it will say green waste. The recycling container is actually going to have an embossment on the lid that shows you what to put in it. The challenge with recycling markets today is that people want to be creative and they say, oh, this must be recyclable, and so they'll put tire chains and hoses and things like that in there. They're not in the picture on the lid, and they're not part of the program as you've defined it. So we prefer not to have that in there because that creates contamination in the load, and we don't want that. That would be something that would create a tagging of that particular container. But it is a nice embossment. It's black and white, but newspapers, cardboard, that sort of thing. It says on there, so that should be helpful to the layperson as to what actually goes into that container.
In terms of educational enforcement, so that folks understand, so we don't end up with a punitive scenario to where it's a public relations nightmare ongoing. How will that be addressed?
Well, as Chris had mentioned, that in your request for proposals, you asked for a tagging system so that the customer would be notified if there was a problem. There's no mechanism for us to punitively fine the customer because their material is bad, but we can point out to them that there is a problem with the way they're using their waste services. That's the purpose of the dedicated outreach coordinator. That's what that body will do, both commercially and residentially.
I was just interested, again, that you'd put on the record that you would work to make the forms and everything as accessible as possible for the seniors and not make them come into the office to get the lower rate. They have to fill out the application and a photocopy of their ID or whatever, but that you'd make it as user-friendly as possible.
You know, you were very astute in determining that not those older folks aren't necessarily computer literate, and they're not going to be looking at something on a website, which kind of takes us back to how we kind of determined how many of those people we thought there were. And we worked through the senior center. We used your census, and we worked through the senior center. So that's the first place we're going to go, is try to get the communication out through the senior center to these folks. Nothing for us to make a document available that they can pick up at the senior center. They don't necessarily have to pick it up at our office, and we will make it part of the package. That won't be a problem at all.
Maybe even potentially an outreach day, and you ask the senior center if you can do a educational class there or whatever, and have a little photocopy machine to help them, like you
Yes.
said, help them. She's
Yeah.
like, I thought of that too, Lori.
Kendra's
That's what she's going to tell me,
Kendra's
right?
actually going to do that.
Yeah.
We have a small presentation for you later, but they're good points, and we've thought through those as well, for the same reason. You obviously put that in there because you wanted it in there. It doesn't do any good to have it in there if it can't get communicated to the people that it's available to them. So that's our intent, is to make sure that it's ready, available for those folks that would qualify for it.
And they certainly have the list, the Meals on Wheel list, that should pretty much cover a good chunk of your applicants.
I'm going to give you my phone number and my email address, and anybody who wants
And
to
your
get a
name.
hold. And hi, I'm sorry, I'm Kendra Kostelecki. I'm the communications specialist for waste management, and outreach is my gig. So, definitely going to give you my contact information for any of the groups that feel like they're not getting a hold of us. But we are, you'll see in a presentation that we're hoping to give to you later, we are going to do some open houses so we can talk to people one-on-one, answer their specific questions, and not just give them information and hope that they understand it.
Suppose someone asks you, as the outreach coordinator, who's the idiot that put mandatory trash collection in here? What are you going to say?
I'm going to say...
I had somebody tell me, who's the idiot that did downtown? I had to say, that's me, or that's board. I passed it. I said, that's the board, not me, man. I don't know who those idiots are. But.
I would say that it would be unusual for a community this large to not have mandatory collection, but that the decision to do so reduces the pricing for everyone, and so I personally think it's a great idea. Whose fault is it? I mean,
Well, I think that takes, I mean, and hopefully, I'm not saying you don't, but I mean, that takes some finesse to let people know what's going on. I mean, because you can always throw us under the bus, but that has other consequences to you. Says we're driving the bus. But just know that, in any of these outreach things, one is to be respectful to people. They may have a different viewpoint. Two is to listen. And three is to have an idea, what types of questions you're going to get and answer them in a way where it's not like they got the garbage police after them, and that's why these folks put mandatory garbage collection in, because they wanted to make money on the garbage police or something like that. Have your answer ready.
right. And to Supervisor Aboud's point, nobody likes to be told what to do. So we try to put that education out gently. They're not always going to receive it gently, but we'll just keep putting it out there as gently as we can and repetitively as we can, because it's a lot. Even just recycling is a lot to catch on to, but now we're adding green waste into the mix. So we're gonna stumble a few times before we get it right.
This is a question for either Rick or Darren. Are we doing the right thing with this contract vis-a-vis the sustainability of our landfill?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, right now, we're trying to divert as much as possible, but we're looking into the future and trying to make sure that, we can get as much capacity out of it as we can. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction everything that's out there right now is try to divert as much as possible and get it back into the recycle stream. So I think this is definitely the way to go. It's definitely a good step in the right direction.
And on the neighborhood cleanup days, I think I know the answers, but let me ask you, how about old cars?
No. That's the answer. No, and really it's a statutory issue. That's a different group of folks. Those are dismantlers and whatnot get into that. Just like us at the landfill, we cannot take vehicles. We are not dismantlers. We can't take anything with a motor. So that's just, it's by statute, we can't.
Just as a general concept, what can people do if they have an old car that's been in their yard for a long time? It's beat up, it's tired, it's not worth anything on it, it's in an antique. How do they get rid of that car?
There are folks like Pick and Pull will take those. They can get a hold of them. They have resources to pick them up, because sometimes you run into situations where the individual doesn't have a resource to move it or get it moved. A lot of times they'll work with those folks to get it, because there's value to them to come get it. So typically places like that. There's other things, you can donate them. You know, some groups specify that they must run. Other groups don't. And what they do is they got contracts with towing companies. They'll come to your house and they'll tow it off and sell it for scrap or whatever and get whatever value they can out of it.
The other question on big items, how about boats? Old rowboats and stuff like that.
We got a bunch of boats that are coming in this week. It's, as long as there's not a motor and as long as there's no fluid in there, we have a title to it. We can show that they didn't steal it from their neighbor and take their boat to the landfill. We can take those, but they can't have a motor or anything to them. Because then you're down to just a hull is basically what you got. And a lot of times they probably don't even float, the ones we end up getting. But the same thing with their trailer. I mean, the boats and the trailers, they got to have a clear title. They got to come to us. We can actually take care of those.
Suppose someone on their regular garbage adds so much that the lid won't close. What do you do then on the regular trash?
That's actually, if it's overflowing, that's part of the notice program. So they're notified that it needs to be able to close. If there's repeat instances of that, then the service provider has the ability to, in coordination with the contract administrator, see about having an additional cart brought to, or having the customer have to get an additional trash cart if they're constantly overfilling and they have more trash than they have capacity for.
Okay, all right. Any other questions this panel? Anybody? You got it? All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I forgot a point to make on the recycling. The base service also includes an extra recycling cart and an extra green waste cart, free of charge. It's included in the base service. So, my suggestion would be for people that are on the western side that have the leave problem, that they have 2 green waste carts. This was a perceived problem in Old Reno, and it just never materialized because people just figured out how to manipulate the system. They just, instead of spending all weekend raking leaves, they only rake them on Sunday. And so and then the next Sunday, or they just put so many bags out and it made things go away. So that's how they worked around the problem. But the fact that if you've got that problem and you can get 2 containers, and it helps mitigate that issue.
I think it's just a space issue.
Of course, yeah. There's always that, yeah. You can have, it's all great that you get the free carts, but you don't have anywhere to put them. It doesn't do you any good.
Okay. Anything else you guys got?
Oh, just a general
question. Go.
So on your rollout plan, so before you deliver the 96-gallon carts, will they have an opportunity to tell you right up front they want the 32-gallon? So you don't waste, they don't even want those big carts.
Our recommendation is that we work with your staff and come up with a solution for that. I mean, obviously for us, we would prefer that. But we've been asked to just deliver 3 carts to each home. So, but if we get notified.
Taking a lot of them up.
Yeah, that's our concern, is that it's creating a lot of extra wear and tear. You guys are concerned about the wear and tear on your streets. We're going to go back driving down that street again to pick up something we just dropped off that somebody doesn't want. So we would like to work with the staff and come up with a solution if we can figure out ahead of time that they only want a smaller container, they don't want a green waste container, they don't want a recycling container, that we can deal with that ahead of time. I can tell you that rollouts are generally messy. It's really hard to identify those folks, but we would prefer to do that if that's at all possible. But we have to work with your staff to make sure that they're in agreement.
Yeah, because you'd have to go back to pick it up and re-deliver the smaller one anyway, so I'm not sure of the road savings, because they're going to go pick it up, so I'm just trying to not inconvenience the residents as least amount as possible.
Understood.
It's your outreach coordinator. Your first name was what again, please?
Kendra.
Kendra?
So, yes,
Are you going to be living down here, or living in Reno, or working here? What?
I live in Reno. Technically, I live in Sparks, actually, but I work in the Reno office. And I do come down, I cover this area as well.
Following up on what Mr. Martinelli said about the rollout, and I'm wondering if it's not advisable to have, during maybe the first 6 months of this rollout, an update from you on what you're seeing in the community, what you're hearing, what problems, just come to us maybe once a month or once every 2 months?
Or more often, if you'd like that. Yeah, we are already planning to keep really close tabs on what's going on and make sure that you are aware of what's going on.
Okay. Well, when we go down this road, I think it'd be helpful to have, at least for the first year, when we're moving to mandatory, that we have a report about what they're seeing. I mean, they may see something different than what we see here, but I think it's important that we keep that dialogue going while they're doing the rollout here. So, all right. Anything else, you guys? Anything? Kendra, anything? It's okay to live in Reno, too. Just be down here as much as you can. So.
I will.
But it's nicer in Carson City.
Yeah, it's nice.
Sorry, thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, I got you. All right. Anybody else, board members? Public comment time. Anybody? Stacy? Supervisor-elect? Fire Chief?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Stacy Giommi. My question is and I didn't see this in the agreement or the presentation. So in the current system, I just want to clarify this. In the current system, if someone has a waste management container, they can put extra bags out. Do I understand that won't be the case after July 1st, that those extra will be part of those 4 times per year events? Is that correct?
May I? Yes. Yes, it is. With an automated system, it's very important that everything is containerized. So you want to make sure that you have the capacity, which is why we included the 96-gallon carts and a very low-cost additional cart if folks have that additional material. Recognizing that there are some times of the year, such as the holidays, where folks may have additional material. You can have up to 4 different collections of up to 6 additional bags. So that is for the health of the community, and it's a standard practice in most communities.
So speaking of that automated system, how does that automated system work then with the bear-proof or the animal-proof container? Because that has to be hand manipulated, at least the one I have now does.
The new carts are actually, they're gravity-based. So when they're turned over, the gravity lock unlocks and it opens and the material comes out. At least in theory, they're tested to do that, and that is what they do.
The bears can never turn them over, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
They're tested to withstand an hour of constant bear contact with, I believe, lots of delicious bear-friendly food inside of them. They have to withstand an hour of that, but there's always going to be some challenges with the animal-resistant carts, but that's the best that they have right now.
So my other question is, obviously 15 years is a long time, particularly as it pertains to the recycling industry, and no one really knows, in 5 years what is going to be desirable from a recycling perspective. I know we don't include food waste in here like a lot of communities do with their green containers. I think that's specifically excluded from this. But what provisions are there in the agreement to reevaluate that? What ability does the city have to reevaluate that if in 5 years food waste becomes a commodity that waste management can accept?
That is such an excellent question, because we actually looked at addressing the long-term implications of this really dynamic industry. There's a number of different ways that this has been addressed. One is that there's a city-directed change provision where if there's any new technology or new service that the city would like to see, then the city can direct the company to bring forward a proposal to include that. The city has the choice of going with that proposal or having it evaluated, making sure that the costs are correct and implementing or not implementing that service. Additionally, we included the list of recyclables as an exhibit versus included in the actual contract itself, so that if from time to time, if another material becomes, there's a market for that material and it can be added, then at the agreement of both parties, there has to be a place for it. So the service provider has to agree. That can be updated. Any changes have to be approved by the board, of course, but you have that flexibility, which is a minor change, and then you also have the ability to request additional services over time, because as you said, who knows 5 years from now. Currently, there's not a market, there's not a place to take food waste. So, and the composter that was proposed by all of the proposers that would accept the green waste does not accept the food waste. So in order to move forward with that, we had to preclude that material.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me, Mr. Mayor.
I've seen digesters or read about digesters that deal with food waste in a pretty sophisticated way. Goes in one side and comes out dog bone or something like that. Is that happening in the garbage collection world on food waste?
You know, Mr. Mayor, there is a company that is working to have a animal food amendment that is generated through the processing of food waste. So it's nutrient rich and is added to certain animal foods like pig food, et cetera. It requires a good amount of land and some different code requirements because of the amount of liquid that is extracted from that material. But who knows, in the next few years, it could become something common. Also, there's digesters that create slurry that's fed into the public waste system. It has to be a very specific mix, and that's also on the horizon. It's expensive to collect food waste. It is very expensive for the weight, the trucks, the actual collection of it, and then also the implementation of the digesters. But that's today. Who knows, again, in the coming 5, 10, 15 years. But you do have the ability to say, we would like to see this technology. Please bring us a proposal to implement this technology so we can decide if this is in the best interest of our community.
You don't have to come back up again, but just nod on the record. Did what she say was correct on food waste?
She's correct.
All right. Yes, sir.
Cody Witt, Full Circle Compost, for the record. So I'm the composter. I can give you my perspective. In transparency, we supported everybody because our main support here as a composter is the increased recycling across the entire state of Nevada. Just who am I? Because some of you don't even know who I am, and I'm right here in Carson City. I'm a fifth-generation Nevadan, took over the company from my dad, Craig Witt. We are the largest compost site in Carson, and as of today, I actually did some numbers. We're up to 500 million pounds of organic waste that we've diverted from the landfill over the last 25 years. That's the weight of 2 of the largest aircraft carriers in the entire world. I had to find that on Google, too. But we take green waste, landscape waste, grass clippings. We do take food waste. We take construction debris that can be made into compost. We take fire prevention materials from Lake Tahoe. There's a lot of material that can come to composting. 35% of all MSW can actually be composted. So in the future, as companies like myself grow, competitors of mine grow, there's lots of opportunities within anaerobic digestion, full composting, anything, to have these facilities and these types of operations grow. Specific to waste management, again, I've supported everybody, but waste management and Full Circle, we've had a great relationship over the last lots of years, and right now we're actually running the largest residential green waste recycling program in northern Nevada, and that's all of Incline Village. This year alone, we've recycled, or they have brought to us, 10,000 cubic yards, so 350 garbage trucks worth of pine needles and residential green waste to our facility that we're processing at the current moment. 20 of my guys are out there right now, really excited about going through it. But anyway, so with that, and a couple of the points, and there's so many that were brought up that are really good, is that I do want to just voice some overall information, because a lot of this that we're leaving out is we're talking about the board and waste management, but the biggest stakeholder is the community and the people making these decisions, and that we really need to push on the community. We're in Carson City. We're in Nevada's first. We're not the biggest recyclers, so we are actually implementing a very large program. And because of that, beyond the education and outreach that waste management can do, that Full Circle could do, is just that the community also gets on board with this. We need to have community support from these two perspectives, and it's mainly that a large call to action on this level to know what goes into a green waste container it's more than just a sticker. It is understanding a whole culture shift, because we're not San Francisco, we're not Seattle. So just bear that in mind, that if there's anything else that the city, the state, everyone can do to push those change initiatives, there's a little bit more than just put all the burden on waste management or myself, because in all, waste management's just delivering the material to me, and who deals with it all? I do. And so with that, any contamination that comes in the bin, that comes to me. We've got guys. We have a very unique situation. We operate at the Northern Nevada Correctional Center. We're on a 1,000-acre dairy farm. We can grow and grow, and we have a public-private partnership right now that could be very beneficial to Carson City at the landfill and many different opportunities that we have. Secondarily, and I brought this up in a different conversation, is I just want this board and the community and everybody to know that the only way materials keep flowing to compost is if people are getting compost. Right now in Nevada, I don't know how many of you go out and buy compost every day. There you go. I'm not saying you need to buy mine either, but we need to talk in open working groups or other situations beyond this franchise agreement, saying, hey, what can we do? Can we make compost because Mills Park is coming here to my site, and then Mills Park stops using chemical fertilizers and starts using compost, so we can move material. It's an inflow, outflow. It's my business to sell compost, so of course that's my inherent goal. But on a community scale, in San Jose, San Francisco, there's beneficial cooperation between the community and the composter, because we're going to have a lot of material, and we want to make sure that material's moving out so we can keep recycling, because that's how it flows. China stopped buying our recyclables. Where are they sitting? In San Francisco. So with that, the same thing can happen in green waste and organics. Food waste is 100% a possibility. I already take it. Waste Management and us created the first food waste program ever in the state, and we were getting 8 garbage trucks a week. That is completely able, and right now I get everything from the Y in California to Heavenly Village comes to my site every Thursday. We get Walmart's, Costco, bunches. We can do a lot of different programs. Residential, it takes time, because you can get really dirty stuff, really nasty, really fast. You guys can come to my site. You can work hand in hand with us. It's really, really fun. But it's cool. So we're dedicated to this, and I just wanted to let everybody know that Full Circle's here, and we like to compost.
I'm glad you came up and explained where you were. That was a good analysis, and I think,
Can I just mention something? You need to get the word out to restaurants, okay? Because they are not aware that they can recycle food waste.
So, and there was just a grant approved through the EPA, NDEP, $20,000 going to it's called the Carson City Green Restaurant Fund, and they're going to start doing interactions with Carson City downtown restaurants to implement food waste. We can do it easily from this.
They're not all downtown.
Not all downtown, I know. But that's there, and it can happen. So actually, businesses are the first ones that should come on to food waste recycling before residents, just from a tactical perspective.
Did the grant go to you or us?
That went to Green Up. It's Donna. Yeah, it was this year, and that's going in for 2019. But it's to a private nonprofit that's going to work with the Carson City downtown district. But there are more than outside of downtown.
It was a very good presentation,
Thank you.
Cody. Thanks. All right. Other public comment? Anybody want to weigh in? Yes, sir. How's Recology doing today? Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and board members. Dave Adler with Recology. We just wanted to come real quick and thank you all for this opportunity, number one. We do thank the staff as well, and wanted to thank Carissa and her firm as well. We do appreciate the process was very transparent and very fair, so we just wanted to publicly say that. We wanted to also congratulate Waste Management. I know a lot of them. Great people. I do think, just want to point out, you got one of the best district managers in Brett Hansen, and he's even a better person. So once again, on behalf of the employee owners of Recology, we just wanted to thank you all for allowing us to be part of the process, and best of luck to the city, and happy holidays.
Mike. You know, I think we mentioned it when we were going to earlier, one of the earlier meetings, you know, the city was negotiated with Recology, or we were trying to go down the road to do, I think in those times it was a MRF. But you know, Recology, and I don't know if it was employee owned then or not, but I'll tell you, Recology was one of the only companies that stood up and said, you know, we'll try and work with what you got. But at the end of the day, I think it failed because we didn't have enough volume. But so you know, the feeling that was left with me with Recology after going through that was very good.
No, we appreciate that. And, yeah, we appreciate that. And once again, happy holidays to everybody, and best of luck. Thank you.
I'm terrific. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. On Susan Fisher with McDonald Carano, and we represent CNS Waste. And we want to thank the staff, the supervisors, and everyone as well for their time and diligence in this. And it's obvious there's been a lot of thought and a lot of time and effort put into it. In looking at and listening to the presentation on the contract and all the negotiations, it sounds like that was very thorough, and you have a lot of good safeguards for the community in there, and you have some off-ramps as well. And the one question that I would have of you, and I'm sure that you've probably considered this, is where you have the off-ramps related to consumer complaints and the time for resolution and all that sort of thing. Is there some sort of a log where everything will be logged in, and then someone from the city reviewing that log on a timely basis and regular basis, ongoing? So just wanted to put that on the record.
I think the answer to that is yes, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted everybody, at least for the first year, to come and talk to us about what's going on. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's important, Susan. It's a good point to raise.
We thank you for your time, and best wishes to all of you for the holidays.
Tell John thank him for his time back there, too. Come on up, John.
All right, I'm back.
John, before you start, let me
Yes,
just
sir.
say, you know, I know you live up in the area up here, part of your family does, and I want to thank you for what you're doing on behalf of the city, what you have done. I know I see you out at various different community events and things like that, and I hope that you stay involved like that with us down here. I mean, I get, you know, that, let me just say, I think, you know, you're good people. I mean,
Thank you.
Put it like that. You're
Thank
good
you.
people.
Yeah, and that's who we are, and love Carson City. I mean, hope the results would have been different, and that we would have had the opportunity to be even a greater member of the community. But yeah, this is not the last you'll see of us. So I appreciate that. Before I get started, John Shea, for the record, CNS Waste Solutions. I guess I will point out, just because it was brought up, that we were the only company to offer weekly recycling and green waste collection, and that rate was about 30 cents, 35 cents more than Waste Management. So for $4 a year, you could have weekly collection of both of those services. And we also did, in our proposal, put in the option for commercial food waste for restaurants, and that was part of our initial RFP proposal. So just thought I would mention that. But yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. You know, as a family-run operation, family-owned business, Nevada business, this was a huge opportunity for me personally and for our company. And commend you on taking, you know, the initiative. This is hard to do, to take this step to initiate and go through this RFP process. So we commend you on that. And As you know, we had, some issues with how this process ended. You've gotten correspondence. I've been here a few times with testimony. And, but I wanted to thank you, though, as we wrap this up, for those of you that we were able to meet with and spend a lot of time with. That meant a lot. I really appreciate the dialogue, the honesty, the direction. And thank you, Ms. Paulson, for your time, and Mr. Yu for, spending as much time out of your schedule, especially this time of year. I know everyone's busy, but I do appreciate that. It really helped with us as we work through some of those concerns and some of those issues. So, with that said, obviously, we would hope that you wouldn't move forward with waste management today. And we are here and available and ready to go if it were to go in a different direction. But again, thank you very much for the opportunity, and good luck moving forward. And if anything changes, give us a call. Thank you.
That was well said. I mean, just well said. Well said. Okay, thanks. Anybody else? Mr. Martinelli? Oh, here we go. Got three of you again. Kendra, come on up. They need a woman up here to help them.
They only let me come because it's hard to shut me up. That's the truth. We have a presentation that we did want to go through with you guys today really quickly. Krista did a great job of talking about what the contract was. We want to go through some of the highlights of what the services are. So if you get questions from residents, you can yeah, okay, awesome. Give me just a moment here.
See if it works with somebody else's computer real quick. Offline, that's all right.
Oh, wait, where's the full? Normal?
Slideshow.
Slideshow.
Go file home, insert to slide.
Oh, thank you. There we go. That's the button I'm looking for from the beginning. Yay. Okay. So we had hoped to blow you away with this presentation, but you guys had such great questions that you already touched on some of our points. So forgive us if it's a little bit redundant. First of all, I'm Kendra Kostelecki. I am the communications specialist. If you'd like to call or email me, here is my information. With me is Brett Hansen, the district manager, and I agree with Dave Adler, one of the best that you could ask for. And also, you know him, Greg Martinelli is our area manager. He is the expert on all things trash and recycling, and now green waste. And again, we want to thank you so much for this opportunity to continue to be your service provider and to do a better job and to improve on the things that you've pointed out that maybe we haven't done the best job on in the past, and we want to show you that we can. So one of those things is customer service, and you may have received your bill insert already. This information is already out there and published. Again, I'm kind of arm wrestling with Google. But we're going to make that Googleable, so you don't have to go to the WM website to find it. But here's our information for anybody who would like to write that down or who hasn't received a bill insert. That's our phone number. That goes directly to a desk on Sheep Drive. You can email us, which also is being answered by a person who is sitting here in Carson City. Or you can stop by and see that person or persons who are responding to your questions. So one of the big questions here was, how do we get people on board? And education is the way to do it. So we're starting today, pushing this information out by letting you know about it, and hopefully, if things go well today, I will begin that communication to our media partners and letting them know that this is what's available to them. We're also sending out recycling calendars. Supervisor Bagwell, you mentioned that you would like that reminder. So in addition to getting this reminder, which you'll see only go for 6 months, we're going to give them, on the flip side of that, a fact sheet that breaks down what it is that we're doing here today. So as they use the services that they have, they can see what's coming to them, because as you know, we can go through this process for years and years and years, and still somebody out there will be surprised that it's happening. We're also going to give them a user guide, not right now because they won't have the 3 carts, but as we move forward, give them a user guide so that they'll begin to understand that we're using trash, recycling, and green waste, what goes where, and how to use that service, and how to contact us if you have any questions about that service. We also are working with local schools currently. We're meeting with them and talking about our recycling programs and answering questions that they have, not just about trash and recycling, but we're talking sustainability. Brett is putting together a series of open houses, which we will do at our location on Sheep Drive, but we're also available to go to the senior center and talk to people and answer their questions, and we're happy to do that. Currently, up in the Sparks and Reno area, I meet with Kiwanis and Lions Club. Anybody who wants to reach out and ask us to come and do a presentation about what the state of the recycling market is or what their services are, just whatever it is, I'm available for that face-to-face contact. Before I hand it off to Brett, he's going to talk to you a little bit about the highlights of what the actual operations are, what the actual services are, but I did want to mention that Supervisor Barrett and I have something in common, and that's, that we both like wine. But also our background in media makes accountability a priority. And I have to tell you, I haven't been with this company for a very long time. I've been with them for a few years now. And accountability is important to me. And the work that I've done with this group of people here locally, I find them to be very accountable and very responsive when asked to educate or reach out. Not everybody's going to be happy. I understand that, but we want to try to bridge that gap whenever possible. So now I'm going to pass it over to Brett Hansen, who is your district manager, to talk about what our services are going to be.
So you can see that on the weekly 95-gallon trash collection, that's a good size bin, and customers will have the opportunity to downsize to a smaller size. On the biweekly green waste, each customer will have the ability to get an additional green waste can in case, for those areas, the west side of town. And then the same thing will be for recycling, the ability to get a second container for free. And that doesn't stop you from getting more if you have the options or the space available. The curbside collection of bulky waste, that's 4 items per year. And then the holiday tree collection, and I know that there's been some issues in the past with, what we service and what the city services as far as the Christmas trees. So this just settles it. We pick it all up, and we can go from there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because I want to, just in my mind, clarify back on the picture.
Oh, sorry. Sure.
Your curbside collection of bulky waste, so you will take the refrigerator, the TV, it doesn't have to fit in a box or 6 bags?
No.
So you'll take the, just want to clarify, because everything I heard on the record today dealt with 6 bags and, okay.
Yeah,
Right.
we also defined mattresses, washer, dryer, refrigerator, box springs, couch, love seat, no cars.
No cars. Yeah, okay, thank you.
And then on the commercial services, curbside bulky waste removal, green waste collection for non-food waste, e-waste and universal waste collection, holiday tree removal. So, the commercial customers are going to get everything that the residential customers get. Continues existing service levels. So the rate reduction, we had by far the lowest rate reduction on the commercial side. And, we have the options of 1 to 6 yard bins.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you need to call for, additional pickup, bulky item, that sort of thing? Do you need to prearrange that?
For
with
bulky
waste?
items, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yeah. And then, we're going to, go ahead. We're going to continue the existing service levels, increased allowable tonnage for the same rate on those compactors. Good. And then, and this is the great piece for you guys is, for the city services, there's just a whole list of things that you guys get, that will help you in keeping the city clean. Neighborhood cleanups, graffiti abatement, the solar compactors, those do work really well, for those high traffic areas. So, I'm not going to go over it again, but you get quite a good package there.
Who organizes the city cleanup day?
It'll be done through staff in coordination with Waste Management. I mean, they owe us, there's going to be one every year, and we'll coordinate with them what's the best time of the year and how we want to roll that out. Then the others that were mentioned in there are, right now we do the Carson River cleanup, and then there's a Pine Nut Mountain cleanup. The other two have been kicked around of doing having 3 locations throughout the city and doing all day, bring all your stuff. It's never taken off, but we wanted to include that to where if we decide we want to do it, we can. And so it's something in there that we don't currently do, but we can do. Does that make sense?
Maybe even like Gonai Road has their area where they do their major cleanup. So maybe, again, once people realize it's there, they might call in and ask us for the neighborhood cleanup bin, because they all do it. I help them once in a while. So they might want the bin.
And then on the increased staff and outreach, we'll be adding local agents right as soon as the beginning of the year to handle our calls and visits. And we spoke about the dedicated outreach coordinator. That person will be specifically sent to customers to meet with them and say, okay, how best to service you with the different sizes and services that we provide. So that's going to be an additional benefit to both businesses and apartment complexes and things like that. And then, I've done check-ins with the, other boards of supervisors, so I'm committing to once a month. If you want more, I'll be here to give you an update and answer any questions that you have.
Well, I think we'll let the city manager, right? How's that sound to you, Nancy? Not interim,
That was
city
good.
manager.
I kind of like the madam part.
You're catching on, man, I tell you. That contract did something there. I think just work with our staff about when you do those things, because I think we do want updates, but I don't know if we have places where we can, devote an hour, we might be able to, but work with our staff about the regular updates, and because I think it's going to be necessary for us to do that. Okay.
And then we're making a $6.75 million investment in just equipment. All new collection trucks, new wheeled collection carts for all of the carts. That's 60,000 carts that we're going to be ordering and delivering to Carson City customers. And then an office modification to accommodate the additional staff. So our investment into this community is large.
Sorry about that. All these services that Brett talked about, we were able to provide at a reduced cost. And the reason for that was because we got a real clear understanding of what our operating structure is here in Carson City. After 20 years, we know what to do to operate most efficiently. Your automation of the collection system, both on the single stream and solid waste, has a huge impact on our overall route efficiency. The disposal for your green waste program is less than it is at the landfill. Requiring your mandatory service is going to add 4,000 to 5,000 customers to the customer base. Now, the reason that moves a little bit is because it's a guess. We know that there's not as many people, and we just don't know how many are going to still want to go to the landfill once a month to get rid of the material. So that was our best pass at it. The greater route optimization, because we're servicing every home we pass by instead of, only 3 homes on one block. The existing operations allowed us to eliminate some of the startup cost. And probably the biggest piece was the fact that you've got a 15-year term that allowed us a longer period of time to amortize those costs. So on the next slide, we thought this was kind of an important thing to show you. We tried to give you a cross-section of customers, but these are the kind of savings from a medium-sized customer down to a small customer to a large customer like the school district. But based on their current solid waste levels, this is what their savings would be on an annual basis, monthly and annually. So I don't know what a teacher makes today, but I don't know if that's enough for one teacher or not. But it's meaningful.
Pretty close.
Yeah. So, why? I don't think there's any question we really want to be here. We're grateful for the opportunity to be your partner. We want to continue to be your partner. And I'd ask you, as you consider this final agreement, that you take into consideration that we're more than 100% compliant with the RFP. We provided the best price. I can't do anything but apologize to you for the matters that have occurred. I can't change what happened in the past. All we can do is commit, and we've done that through an MOU in this agreement that we've attached to this agreement, that these are the things we're going to do, and we're willing to sign our name and commit to it. Mr. Mayor, you asked me in November if I was retiring. I have no immediate plans, but I will be here throughout the rollout of this contract, and can assure you that you will get everything that we committed to you for. And we're happy to answer any questions that you have, and we thank you for the opportunity to be here today.
I didn't mean to put you into retirement early.
I'd be fine with that, sir.
Any other public comment? Anybody? All right, board. It's fish or cut bait time. Go, talk.
Make a motion?
Yeah, motion.
Okay. I move to approve contract number I better put these on, 1819-041 for a new collection services franchise agreement with Waste Management of Nevada pursuant to the late materials stamped 12/2018.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion?
Discussion.
Discussion's in order.
So I want to thank all of the applicants, because I think the RFP itself actually made everyone do a better job to figure out how to provide service in Carson City. So I think having everyone sharpen their pencils and work hard to answer an RFP gave us one of the best products for the taxpayers of Carson City and the ratepayers. And so I just want to take a moment to thank even the ones that weren't successful, because I think you actually held Waste Management's feet to the fire, right? Because everybody has to work hard when you have an RFP, and I want to thank staff for all of their hard work, and I think we're getting a good product for the residents, and we'll hold them accountable for their customer service component, but based on price and everything that's in here, they have to comply. If they don't, we'll take the remedies. But I think the Carson City taxpayers getting a really good service here. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, think everybody did a good job. I was the voice, loud voice regarding my look back at service, and I understand that you can't do anything but go forward. At the same time, I come from an era when we did some things on a handshake. I don't know that we've ever done that in the trash service business, but I don't like to have to go through this, but we just went through a contract and another situation. You have to have contracts nowadays, and I understand it. I think our staff and our consultant and all of the people who came in on the RFP did a good job. One of my problems with this is what makes it easy for Waste Management to underbid other people. I'll call it that, although it's not a bid. The fact that it's 15 years long. I'm glad the off-ramps are in there. I'm going to look at those as a way to keep monitoring the situation. But I still cannot bring myself to vote aye on this. Yet I do commend you for your proposal and your follow-through. I hope it continues, and we'll look forward to that.
And I'd just like to thank our public who weighed in, because everybody took an active part. There's nothing like garbage to bring people out. And they spoke out in force. And so I think that's great, and I think all the proposals reflected that, and I appreciate everyone's effort in going forward.
Yeah, I'll just second that and say, each and every one of you were very professional, and our consultant, you were a godsend. Very well done. I mean, it's important for us to have that third-party review that you bring with the experience of what's going on in the rest of the world and the rest of in the garbage industry, because there's just a whole lot of, you see by this contract, there's a whole lot of complexities and nuances that happen in trash and, composting, as Cody's back there talking about. There's a whole lot of that, and it helps, not that Rick or Darren or our staff couldn't do it, but I think it helps them to have somebody with a broader viewpoint who's been through several of these, knowing what's possible, what's the realm of things that you can ask for and reasonably ask for. So my hat's off to you, and to all the bidders. You're all very professional folks, and let me just leave it like that. You're very professional and good people. So anything else? Any other discussion? Okay, you ready to vote? On the motion, all in favor? Signify by saying aye. I didn't see it. I don't.
It's up.
Okay. Is that 4?
No. Are you?
You gotta ask for
Oh, nays, right.
No.
No, okay. And abstention, yeah.
3-1.
All right. Vote is 3 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention. All right. That completes that. All right. All right, thank you all very much. We're now on concluding public. I'll get Iris. Concluding public comment. Iris, could you come up to the witness table?
The grilling table.
The interrogation spotlight?
Yeah.
All right. Did you bring money with you? Because you're leaving, right? You got to have an exit fee. Huh? So tell us a little. I mean, one, we want to thank you for being a great lawyer for us, and putting up with the 5-headed monster up here. We all have different views. You've done a nice job, Iris. A wonderful job, and just want to thank you for that. And why don't you tell us a little? I know they're all talking. Here. Hang on a minute, guys. There we go. I got to hear Iris.
So I want to thank you guys. You've taught me so much. It's been great. The new position, it's with the Reno City Attorney's Office.
So where are you going to be? The City Attorney's Office?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They don't do criminal work there, do they? Or do they?
Yes, and that's what I'm going to be doing criminal prosecution again.
Felonies, misdemeanors, or what? The whole gamut of criminal work?
They do, it's just misdemeanors. They have a civil division, which is pretty extensive as well, so it should be good.
We'll miss you. Thanks.
But I will miss you guys.
All right, Iris.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Now, that's some public comment. Anybody else for concluding public comment?
Iris was instrumental to this contract and working through it, so she deserves a lot of credit for helping us through this with Dan's assistance. She did an awesome
That costs you more on the exit fee now because, we got to cover ourselves for the damage you're doing by leaving, so. That's a good lawyer statement, huh? All right. Anything else? Anybody? I don't see anybody for concluding public comment. Are we ready to adjourn, folks? Been a long, huh? You ready, Brad?
Thanks for waking me up.